with Mia Fields, and we're going to have Andy from the Vertical Band joining us kind of as a surprise guest. I just found out about this about 10 minutes ago, but of course I'm happy to have Andy on with us.
Yes.
We've had him several times, and two people that we get to talk to who have a lot of insight into songwriting. And just a little bit of a backstory, as many of you will see, this is called quote-unquote Part 2, because Mia was just on the phone with me. We did a webinar together a couple of weeks ago, and so many people were really inspired, and I wanted to have time to get to some questions, but we actually never ended up getting to them. So so many questions continued to pour in, and we just talked to Mia after the webinar and said, hey, why don't we just do a follow-up, and we'll just make it interactive, with question after question, and basically we'll be letting you guys guide the whole conversation. So I have about 20 questions here that have come out from our last webinar together, which
awesome.
Mia's had a little bit of time to look through, and you guys are just going to kind of shoot from the hip, shoot from the heart, and take it from there. So before we get into the questions, I'd just like to give a little bit of personal context. I don't know if I mentioned to you last time, but Mia, I actually just got home from a 5-day worship leaders retreat with our own church, and we are developing this kind of band model in our church where there's probably 6 or 7 different bands that are rising up, little communities, and these bands are trying to practice and rehearse, develop a repertoire, write individually, and then also write collectively. I know this is a model that a lot of churches are following that. So anyways, I just got home literally a couple of nights ago we went 6 hours up into the middle of British Columbia and sat at a lake together with 13 of us and just spent a couple of days focused on writing songs together. So that was actually my first experience personally, totally dumped into an environment like that where we're like, okay, here's a little session on songwriting, now just go to it. And everybody just kind of, some went to the lake, down to the dock, down to the deck, up by the fireplace. We had all these different little clusters of people that kind of, somewhat randomly, but perhaps not, just gathered together, and we're like, okay, so let's write a song.
I never think it's random to
no.
Carve out time to write, and I think it's such a great way of grabbing a bunch of people and to be honest, it's a great way to force you to co-write, especially if it's out of your comfort zone, and to write with get you in the habit of writing with people who maybe you don't always write with, because that's one of the ways people always say well, how do I find people to write with? And I say, well, just have a go at writing with lots of different people, and you'll find the people that it works well with. And at the end of the day, relationship is king. So it doesn't matter if you don't get a great song. It's that whole beautiful thing of finding out spending time with one another and just building community, especially for a church team. But also it's an amazing way to just get good at your craft. People always say well, how did you get good? And honestly, consistency and learning from others and co-writing is something that really helps shape you. So I never think it's a bad idea to carve out time like that. And I think it's awesome to do, little retreats like that. And it doesn't even have to be at for those who are listening, it doesn't even have to be at a lake or anything like that. Or, maybe you're well, our church doesn't have the resources to be able to do that. But most of you have an auditorium, and there's nothing stopping you from maybe one Thursday or one Wednesday or something, maybe before a rehearsal you just have 2 hours before where you get some of your team together and say, hey, let's just maybe split into groups of 3 and write for a couple of hours and come back and show each other the songs and maybe give each other some feedback. And so it's so easy to be able to cultivate that sort of an environment where you're really building each other up as writers.
Yeah, and I think, there's something about, you're totally right, whether it's at the lake or, at someone's house or before practice or whatever it is. But the one thing that was unique is that we were trying to be intentional about it, that songs don't just kind of come, say from the shower, or maybe it starts in the shower or in your car or whatever, but there's something about being intentional and sitting down and saying,
totally.
okay, now we're actually going to write a song together. But maybe this could be my first question to you is it does feel kind of intimidating when you're sitting across from someone and, they're a reasonably good friend, but both of you have a fairly blank slate, and you know that you're sitting down together saying, we want to write a song, but, how to kind of break in or make that directional step towards coming up with something. And I will say that as we experienced this at our little songwriting retreat, it was amazing, some of the songs that were coming out, and people were like singing and clapping, and beats were going all over the place. It was super encouraging to see the outcome, but you have to kind of step through that initial like, here we are sitting down, where do we start? So that is something to break through, hey?
Yeah, so, Andy's just walked in the room, and Andy and I sat down to co-write together a lot for Vertical Church.
Yes.
And also, like, Andy's, like, we've written songs, for my project as well. And I think the biggest thing is like, you have to, I think the first thing is you just, doing anything out of relationship takes some of the intimidation out of it, which is why I say to people, sometimes people will, like, email me on Facebook and say, like, oh, I'm coming to Nashville, can we write a song? And to be honest, I'm like, well, I don't really know you. Like, and, like, yes, I write with some people that I don't know, but usually they're people that, like, we're comrades in the same kind of thing. I think God does so much in community, and I think sitting down, if you sat down to write a song with me and you didn't know me, then I think that is, you would probably end up leaving the session crying because you don't know me and I write a certain way. Like Andy, when he sits down with me, he knows, like we both know not to be offended at certain things because we know nothing's personal. And I think that's probably the first thing that you have to remember as writers is, like, it's not, just because someone doesn't like your idea doesn't mean they don't like you. It's not personal. And then it's a great thing as well, like, when you sit down to maybe just offer the floor to the other person and throw back some ideas and see which one gels first. Just because it doesn't have to be your idea for it to be your song. Like, at the end of the day, like, I like to think of songwriting is in a way that, like, everybody contributes, and if the other person wasn't in the room, then the song wouldn't have been finished the way it was finished. So, so I think you just have to be honest, like, let go of intimidation, and write with people that you know, and that you can, like, learn from and learn how to, like, co-write effectively with. I don't know, Andy, do you have anything that you'd want to say on that?
Sure. And hey,
Andy, welcome to our. We're so glad to have you as our little surprise guest here. It must be so awesome just sitting in the back of the bus there with Mia, and we're really glad that you can join us today.
That's great to be here. Thanks for letting me kind of gate crash. Yeah, my experience has been, for anybody out there listening, just, I play worship songs in my own church that have people's names on it, like Jason Ingram, and but I've also kind of got to see the other side of that coin and get to write with someone like Jason, who, the first time I ever wrote with him, which is why I'm saying this, is like he invited me. We've known each other for a long time, but still, he invited me to come to Nashville to write for one of the Vertical Church records, and for 2 days. And the first day, like, I walked in ready to go, like, guitar in hand, let's do this. And he was like, yeah, we're not going to write any songs today. We're just going to hang out and talk, like, about what the Lord is doing in our lives. And we talked for the whole day just about the Lord and our families. And then the next day, like, we wrote 2 songs back to back. Like, one of them, which made the record, and one of them that didn't, that ended up being kind of one of my favorite, just kind of like devotional songs, just with the Lord, that I sing just, I pull out kind of once a month or something like that, and
oh, you there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Yeah. So that was like a really groundbreaking moment for me because I thought, man, this Jason Ingram, he could just cough, and a song comes out, and even he, with all the kind of like me kind of holding him up on a pedestal, just to be honest, in that moment, was like, no, we're not going to get any good songs unless they come out of a relationship.
Yeah.
It's amazing how even writing with there is some of it where because I write for a record label, some of my job is writing with people that I've never met but I know of but maybe don't know. There is something to when someone comes in the room, just asking them maybe where they're at, what God's speaking to them about, because that can, but a great conversation can spur a great idea. And it's amazing how when you write out of what's real for you or what's real for the other person, there seems to be a weight to that. It's always taking what we're walking through and turning it into prayers and then putting those prayers to music, I guess.
That's really good. Really good. Starting out of relationship, and what a great way to start this whole time we have together. And you guys just representing that with the relationship you have developed and the whole team, and super encouraging to hear. Well, I'm going to just start going through, because if I don't get to some of these questions, I end up just talking with you, Mia, because you're so easy to talk to, both of you guys. Just really appreciate you a lot. And so, but I want the people's voice to be heard here. And so this might feel a little bit random as we go through. I'd like to get through a lot of these questions. So we'll just try to take maybe, 3 or 4 minutes. Some will take shorter answers, some a little bit longer, but we're just going to kind of press through. The questions are going to come up on the screen. I don't think, Mia, you and Andy can see that, but we'll read the questions to you. And the rest of the people can just kind of follow on what track we're going on. And we're just, being super real, shooting from the hip, speaking from the heart with Mia Fields and Andy here, who are both out on the road. They're basically sitting together in the back of the bus in a quiet room. And so they're very much in the context of, the world of leading worship, writing songs, and having this pleasure now to tour around and share them with others. So anyways, that's the context, and we're just going to blaze right into it. So the first one is from Michael, and he says, I'm a guitarist and a singer-songwriter who's been trying to record an album for a few years. What's the process you would recommend going through in order to have at least 1 to 3 songs recorded and out into the world?
I think people say that, ask that question a lot, say, how do I get my songs out there? And I would, this might sound like a really harsh answer, but actually it's like me telling you the kindest thing I can tell you to set you up to win. And that's that, honestly, I'm so grateful that my first songs did not end up out in the world, because then people would bring those up now and laugh at them, because they were terrible. They were rap songs, I don't know why I was writing rap, but that's what I was doing. But on the other hand, there is, when I first started writing songs, there wasn't the thought to put things on YouTube. There wasn't the thought to use GarageBand. We didn't have. It makes me sound like I'm a dinosaur, but we didn't have GarageBands or anything when I was 18. There was computers, not as, things weren't as accessible as they are today. So I would say wherever you're at, Michael, and anyone else who's there is something great about getting your songs down and just having a recording of them. It feels like it's finished, or you've accomplished something with your songs, but it's great to have a goal. But I would say before you record anything, the one thing I say to anyone, to churches, to people, to anyone who's wanting to record songs, I say do not spend money and do not press record on anything until you have amazing songs, because it's just not worth it. It's not worth recording bad songs. There's nothing more terrible than when you get a CD and there's 12 stick tracks and 2 listen tracks. And what I mean is there's 2 tracks you can listen to and everything else you skip. It's super disappointing, and to be honest, it's a massive waste of money. But so I would say aim for having 3 songs that are amazing, that are songs that, you've even taken to some other people and got some really good feedback. Not just people that will tell you something nice, but people that will be honest with you. Get amazing songs, and then maybe start talking to some guys in your church and talking to people that you know. I promise you, there is always, in every church, there is always someone who is interested in production. There is always someone who maybe has a sense of how to use Pro Tools or how to use Nuendo or Logic. And if not, maybe you contact some of the other churches in your area, and start talking to those musicians and start getting to know them. And I promise you, God does everything in relationship, and there's always someone who will want to help you out. And maybe you then find someone in your community who does that, and let it be the same way that it's a step of faith for you. Let it be a step of faith for them, and partner with them and make something. I don't know, Andy, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. We write about 100 songs per record that we make, and that's 10 songs, 11 songs that make a record. And I've talked a lot of guys through making short records, EPs. I just talked to one guy actually a couple of weeks ago from Canada at one of our harvests, and he's we have this one song and it's going great at our church, and we wrote it, and I'm thinking about putting 2 or 3 songs together. I'm like, dude, stop. Just do the one song and just get it out there, and because if you give your church a song that they love to sing back to the Lord, then that's going to create a demand for more, and then you can start building on top of that. But some of the songs that come out of our writers' retreats, we think, man, this song is going to be amazing, and then we play it to the church, and they just kind of look at us like a deer in headlights. They're like, no, we don't like this, and so those songs never make the records, and that's okay. They're just, you just kind of got to keep writing. So at the end of the day, definitely write more, just like Mia said, write more than what you actually need.
Yeah. And don't be too worried about, one of the questions I get a lot, which I think, is probably part of your question, Michael, and something that people are interested in is people say, how do I get my songs out there? And I don't think it's arrogant or it's weird to ask that, because I think sometimes a lot of people are asking, well, how do I get my songs into the hands of someone in publishing or a record label? How do I do that? Because people want to know what the connect is from well, I write songs to I got signed, or I write songs to I do it professionally. And I always just say honestly, God is the best hustler you have. And I honestly don't know anybody who has gotten a record deal by handing a CD out. The great thing about most people listening is most people aren't tuning in from Nashville. And if you live in Nashville, it's actually way harder to have a song heard than if you live in Ottawa in Canada, or if you live in Troy, Alabama, or if you live in White Rock in Vancouver. I think it's the amazing thing about that is there actually isn't an influx of amazing songs coming out of any of those places. Whereas Nashville, there is a million amazing songs being written every day. So it's hard to take notice. But for where you are, I promise you, if you are writing amazing songs, people will hear about it and people will take notice. And the other thing is, guys, is just take responsibility for what you want to do. You have in your life what you value, and it's really easy to just if you want to get your song out there, it actually is really easy to get it recorded and just with some people in your church or whatever, and then actually just put it on iTunes and say, hey, use social media to say, hey church, we've got this song out, we've been singing it in church for however many weeks, why don't you check it out on iTunes, or put it on SoundCloud and give it to your church for free.
Yeah. Hey, we just had a question there from a real practical question from Ted, is asking, so if I have a song, he's asking, what are the most common methods to communicate the music to potential performing recording artists? Like, is it piano notation, chord chart, and demo track? What do I do once I have the song and I want to feed it into, the world of artists or my church or, a publisher or places like that? What do you do, Mia, with your song once you have it?
The big thing, that I keep going back to, and it's not because, I'm trying to give a vague answer, but it's because it's actually the truth, and is that God does everything through relationship. So I think it's very hard to send somebody you do not know a song and expect that they will listen to it and then expect that they will record it, especially if, they already write their own songs, which many recording artists actually already do. So you have to let God open the doors for building relationship and getting you to that place. I'm from a town of 3,000 people, and I just bit by bit God began to open the door to different things, but it was about me being a good steward of my gift. So honestly, I would suggest, for your own reputation, don't send in songs to people that you don't know and that you don't have a relationship with. If the song is really amazing, then, it really comes down to a trust issue. Do you trust that God can get it there? I think a better avenue is maybe you put it up on YouTube and then you just let, word of mouth do the work for you. Because if the song is that amazing, then people will hear about it. And then, you might be thinking it's meant for one artist, then God ends up using it and getting it, through YouTube or whatever, gets it to another artist that was a way bigger, avenue than you ever thought. As far as bringing songs to church, maybe you're man, I'm a musician and I write songs and I want to submit this song to church. I think our worship leader could do this really well. I think just even making sure that you just have a lyric sheet and a chord sheet and then just a demo that just has even if it's a piano vocal, just something that showcases the song well. I think as far as demos go, don't make it 12 minutes long. And don't put 15 songs on one demo. Just bring your best song and make it the most the simplest format, and then just bring it in the most clear way. And then maybe then you show a band and then you workshop it with a band and say once the song's really strong.
Yeah. Mia, I just want to say I really appreciate. I can tell that you're trying to not beat around the bush. You're trying to give straight answers to people who, I think these questions are coming from sincere hearts. People are I want to be a songwriter, but sometimes people have perhaps lofty dreams of how that actually happens, and and we don't realize how many songs, like what Andy was saying, and I was almost going to ask that question of you, Andy, and then you just said it, that 100 songs started the process before you got to 10 songs or 11 songs that made it, and just Mia,
and that's coming from as well. Andy actually knows how to write a song. I write with the Vertical Church team a lot, and those guys, they all know how to write songs. They're not guessing and they're not trying to figure it out. They know how to write songs, and they still write 100 songs to get 10. And I always I think the biggest thing for me is I don't want anyone to be under any illusions about the whole songwriting thing, because I think it does feel it is one thing I've noticed, and I've been doing this now for 14 years. It's one thing I've noticed where people think because it's for the Lord and because it feels a bit spiritual that you can just pick up a guitar one day and do it. And I do think it's the same as jumping into a pool. Can you jump into a pool any day of the year? Yes, you can. But if you want to swim in the Olympics, you have to train and you have to do the work. And I think songwriting is the same. I'm big about saying to people, I think it is amazing that you want to swim in the Olympics, but you have to do the work. You can't just go and try out for the Olympics, because you will end up feeling overwhelmed and embarrassed because you won't be able to keep up with the other metaphorical swimmers. So how much better to train and become good at the craft instead of maybe you have a day where you just where you write one amazing song. Well, that's fantastic, but how much better to train and be consistently amazing at bringing songs. And you know what? The thing about that is, like, you know, if you're really good at writing songs, then someone will say, you know, like it's amazing how doors will begin to open for you anyway, and you won't have to even like look for ways of like how do I get into this. It would be the same as me saying to someone, you know, like, well, you know, like I feel pretty inspired and I wrote this sermon, so I'm going to get up and preach every week. When, to be honest, like, that's not something that I do that well, you know, and so it's something I would have to like learn and like practice and get good at, you know, and like, yes, maybe like there is, I'm not saying that people aren't anointed. I think God anoints hearts, but I think you have to do the work, you know. But I like anyone, like, if you do the work, you will get the results, you know. So I hope that is encouraging for people and not discouraging. I'm just telling you like what I've seen to be true, and that's that. Everyone I know, I don't know anybody who has got a record deal out of handing songs to record labels or to artists. I don't know anybody who has got songs recorded by like stitching their stuff. Everyone I know has just worked hard at their craft and served in church and become excellent at what they do, and God opens doors.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, let's just keep moving because I think every question here is an opportunity. You're giving us a window into the world of, you know, the hard work of songwriting. And I think some people, you know, we see your name on all these different songs, and Andy, we see Vertical Church going around, and this is an opportunity to say there is a labor that goes, you know, underneath that. So I think every question that we answer is that opportunity for, you know, you to give us the real world of songwriting, and I think that's what you're giving us. So Ryan is asking, I see Greg has a question up here on the screen. When you're writing, do you find you write for yourself, for God, or for a crowd to enjoy? What's the person that you have in your mind when you're writing, or the group or crowd?
I think it depends on what your goal is for the song. So I'm going to and even what context you serve as far as writing songs. So I'm going to let Andy answer first, and then we come from different points of view. So.
All right, so here's what I would say to worship songwriters out there. The best song you ever write, if you ever write the best song you're ever going to write, you should hope that the Lord somehow taps you on the shoulder and says, I don't want you to sing that to anybody else. I want to be the only one who ever hears that. Now, that said, just to make a point, which is that I'm not trying to wow anybody but God with my song.
Right.
And I want to wow him with my song. It's okay to wow someone with your song. And it's okay to wow the Lord. Like I want to stir his heart. I want to put a smile on his face. I want him not to be pleased with my song. I want him to be pleased with my effort.
Yeah.
And so I think when I sit down to write, you know, I'm writing with my church in mind, because I'm thinking I want to give them something that they will want to see and will be easy to see. But they will also sing it. Like I think, you know, like I heard Chris Tomlin say on a podcast, you know, like he feels like the chief end of success is when he hears that someone sang one of the songs and has no idea that he wrote it. Yeah. And
story of my life.
And I think because what that's really saying is that person is writing your song in their heart to the Lord, and you're not part of it. So when you write, you're writing to the Lord. You're writing letters, you're writing love songs to him, but you're also writing it on behalf of the people who you're also trying to kind of help them say something to the Lord that they might not be able to say without you?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say for me, I always say I'm a Jonathan, not a David, which means like I find God always sets me alongside kings, I feel like, at what they do and gets me to serve them. And I love that. And I think I like to say, like, as far as approaching songs, like, sometimes God will tap you on the shoulder and say, I don't want anyone else to hear this song because it's not good. So he's actually protecting you because that's what dads do. But I also think, like, it's really important, like, if you're going to write a song, to write something that people know what to do with. There's no point in bringing some weird, like weird out of context song to people. So I will say one of the things for me is I look at like who I'm trying to serve. You know, I say like I'm a Jonathan, not a David. So who am I trying to serve? So, you know, for example, when I'm writing with, you know, the vertical church team, I'm thinking about the church and thinking, how does this serve their people well? You know, how does this serve church well? Is it like, you know, so I'm thinking about things like, can people sing this? Is it accessible? Is it theologically correct? You know, but then when I'm writing for, you know, artists, like say I'm writing a song for Francesca Battistelli, like I think, you know, well, who's her audience and what does she need and what is going to what is going to serve what she does well. So I think for those people out there, think about what your goal is and who it's for. Like I think at the end of the day, your whole life is for God. So, you know, the Bible talks about, like, whatever you're doing, do everything unto the Lord, you know. So, for me, like, I'm having this conversation with you guys right now, and it's unto God.
Right.
But I also so I go, like, you know, when I'm sitting down to write a song, that should be unto God, but so should babysitting somebody else's kids. So I think it's really important to, like, then ask, you know, who's the song for? If it's for, let's say you're writing a song for your church, well, does it serve them well? You know, can they sing it? Is it accessible? You know, does it even make sense then, like, in regards to the other songs you're doing in church, you know? Like, if it's for maybe you as an artist, can you sing it well? Who's your audience? You know, if your audience is kids, like, let's say you're wanting to make a kids album, well, like, is the language, like, a language that kids can understand? Or does it say, you know, maybe you've got a worship song that says, like, let your Shekinah glory fall, like, you're going to wash it in the blood. And, like, 5-year-olds are going, what the heck? I don't even understand. So maybe then you, like, it's always thinking about who's it for, who's it going to serve.
That's really good. Good stuff. Let's move on to a new question here. I want to talk a little bit about some co-writing or songwriter influences on your lives, and perhaps you can both share, like if I was to ask you, who are some people that you've really been inspired either co-writing with or who have really inspired and challenged you as a songwriter, that you really admire them in the way they write? Can you, both of you, I'd like for you to share a couple of names that just come to mind as these are people that have impacted me in songwriting.
Eddie?
I'm inspired by anybody who doesn't just have the Bible on their lap, but they have it in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm inspired by people who are worshipers before they're ever worship songwriters. Like those kind of like people who are. I'm inspired by people who are broken. And I want to acknowledge their brokenness and be transparent in a song. To name a few names, obviously, as a British guy, come on, like Matt Redman is like, I went to worship events in 1996. Gosh, where that guy would just get up on stage, in his sweaty T-shirt, like he'd come in from leading soccer and just play some songs in front of 6,000 people, and just there was no kind of hey, this is going somewhere. This is it was just all just I'm just writing songs like out of my heart, out of God's word. And what I love about Matt, even to this day, is that he really, really gets under the surface of the scripture and really like digs into a fresh way to say a timeless truth.
Yeah.
So, you know, that would be one person. Obviously, Mia Fields, gosh. Like.
I set you up for that one, Andy, so you...
No, hey, here's what I love about... No, I actually say this because I like writing with Mia a lot. And here's why, is that, like, just for writers out there, is, like, a good thing about co-writing is, like, keeping the thing going. Like, when you start writing, like, you commit to, like, a couple of hours, you need to, like, keep the energy up. And what I love about writing with Mia is that, like, she will just, like, she like shifts up through the gears as she like gets into the song, and like there's no braking, there's no like putting foot on the brake pedal at all, you know, and that's actually a really good thing because when you have someone who's strong like that, who's willing, like, you see obstacles kind of coming up in your song, you feel the burn of, like, writer's block, and to have people who are willing to just kind of, like, drive straight through those things and just kind of keep going, you like, produce fruit. You always come out with fruit at the end of that. So.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
I will say there is, I think, you know, just some people that I've been inspired by, you know, one of the things I was good at, like, you know, I only had one thing that I was good at was songwriting, and everything else I had to learn. But that didn't mean I stopped learning the one thing I was good at, and the one thing I was good at was lyrics. And so I was really inspired by great lyricists, and like and wanted to be even better at like bringing things in a new, fresh way. So for me, like someone like Nicole Norderman has been a massive inspiration as far as pulling songs out of me that I didn't know were there and making me dig deeper. And I think that's a really amazing thing for songwriters out there. I think we all want to have, you know, like the Bethel team, you know, mentor us, or you want, you know, the Vertical Church guys to mentor you. And I go, you know that they can, like, put on a CD and learn from them. Because songwriting is about developing your instincts and like being inspired and getting inspired. And it's amazing how, like, being a lover of what everyone else does, it makes you learn. And so Nicole Norderman, for me, I think has been a massive inspiration. You know, God is so good about putting you in places and, like, aligning you with people that will pull different things out of you. So I'm super grateful that I got to be at Hillsong for 10 years because people like Ruben Morgan and Joel Houston and Brooke Fraser, like, have all been great comrades in, like, teaching me things about songwriting that I needed to know along the journey. And I'm super inspired by the way that they keep, you know, bringing a fresh sound and bringing, like, fresh things. I think it's so awesome. Guys like Ben Fielding, who are so true to, like, singing songs that the church can sing. I love that, you know. But I would say to everyone out there, you know, it really serves you well to be a lover of what everyone else is doing and to learn from like what other people are doing well. I don't think it's, you know, if to be a music snob is a stupid thing for a songwriter, because it means that you won't learn or love what anyone else is doing. You know, I learned so much from the Vertical Church guys, even being on this tour. I'm so inspired by the way that John writes and the way that Andy writes. And I think that's the thing, hey, like, it's just like making sure that you're, like, open to everything, because every genre can teach you something and every writer can teach you something. I mean, you might not like, you know, rap music, but it's amazing when you listen to rap music, you know, it teaches you so much about, you know, rhyme scheme. You know, I hated country music when I moved to the United States, and I'm sure you can relate, Andy, because you're British, and we just, Australia and Britain, we just don't listen to, like, country music. But I moved to Nashville, and, like, country music is the thing. And, man, learning to love country music has taught me so much about telling a story in a song and making, even about like putting clever hooks and clever turns in the song lyrically, So I think be a lover and learn from everything.
Mm-hmm. Joshua asks, and I have seen a couple of questions come up like this, because it seems like writing fast songs is something that people are always looking for or trying to figure out. You're writing the slow songs, the intimate, personal, but the fast songs are harder to write. Joshua's asking, it seems harder to write faster or more upbeat songs. What are some things you keep in mind when writing those more up-tempo songs? Do you ever come into a session and be like, okay, we need to write something upbeat? Is that like a mentality that you shift into? You're writing an upbeat song, the church needs it. Just tell us about those different tempos of songs as you approach them.
Well, I'm going to basically let Andy answer this, because I feel like some of his up-tempo songs are some of my favorite songs to lead in church, and they work really well with a full band or even just on an acoustic. Songs like Open Up the Heavens, like, amazing. Like, so I think he's got pretty much all the answers on this. But I will say, for me, I think you need to not be intimidated by up-tempo songs and listen to up-tempo songs. It's amazing how they will, like, spur other things. But to be honest, I listen to a lot of pop music, and I love that because it teaches me how to write things up-tempo. The other thing is, when you sit down, it's a little bit hard sometimes to write an up-tempo song without a beat. Sometimes I will just get a beat and put a beat down, like, or, like, pull a beat up from, like, even another song, just to, like, keep some, like, inspiration there and, like, even set you in the right mind space. For writing that tempo song. But Andy, what do you think?
Yes, I completely agree with what Mia said. Actually, I like both. All of the up tempos that I'm thinking of right now that I've been a part of. Usually, when we started the writing session, someone kind of kicked off with loaded up like a kick drum sound that's just like keeping it tempo, and we actually kind of just kept it going the whole session, just never turn it off, and it kind of helps you stay, because up tempos are way more of a discipline to write than like mid-tempo, slow-tempo songs, because by default, I think as songwriters, we kind of lean towards mid-tempo and slow songs. I've met very few people who like lean towards like up-tempo, high energy. And then also I would say like Open Up the Heavens, I'm surprised it worked.
Are you joking?
Because I think it's quite wordy, and there's a lot of rich content in there, and that's really because like I pulled my pastor into it, and he kind of really like, he was preaching a series at the time, and we really kind of went for some depth. But I would say in general, I would lean towards up tempos from avoiding too much, like avoiding it being too wordy.
Yeah.
Right. And definitely on your chorus. Like, the chorus is the hub of the wheel of a song, and your verses and your bridges are kind of spokes that support that hub. And in an up tempo, there's always like this invisible line between your verse and chorus, or your pre-chorus and your chorus, that basically says, "And so I say." In fact, if you listen to some songs, some songwriters actually write that into the song. They sing like, "And so we sing," and then they sing it like in the chorus, right? And in an up-tempo song, that has to be something really just like, it's one thought. It's just like real simple, and that's a way easier way to get like an up-tempo song across the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Even just as well identifying what is an up-tempo idea, and like getting good at like attaching like great ideas to up-tempo kind of stuff. Like I look at a song like God's Great Dance Floor, And I mean, that song could never have been anything but up-tempo. Like, and if you hear the original version, it actually is, like Martin's version is actually slow, and it almost doesn't make as much sense. So even like thematically thinking of things that feel up, like maybe you want to write an up-tempo song, well, what things feel like they're up? Well, joy feels like it's up. It feels like you can't put joy with like a moody kind of, introspective melody. So think about like, even starting out thematically, like, well, what feels like it's an up-tempo idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really great. When we were doing our songwriting, I was saying, Andy, before you came on, that I was just on a songwriters retreat and had my laptop out, and we did pull up Logic, which probably many people are familiar with. Logic is just the more advanced version of GarageBand, and there's a whole bunch of beat loops in there, and it does help. I would just kind of crack open the laptop and then kind of found a beat and then just let that play, and it definitely helps to sort of get your mind in that kind of rhythmic way. And I like what you were saying, Mia, as well, about finding a thought. Maybe it's a lyrical hook that you can just land on that has a real celebratory or upbeat kind of theme to it, and go with that. So maybe I'll let that segue into this next question, because this is something I was really watching as I was experiencing the whole songwriting process this last weekend, is the dance between lyrics and melodies. And so what I'm kind of leaning towards is sometimes you got a melody and you're trying to say a word, but you're trying to stuff it into a melody or a rhythm that only has so many syllables, and it's got to rhyme with, this or that. And it's this kind of push-pull between, do I let the melody go with what the word is saying, or do I try and stuff the word into the melody, or finding that beautiful balance between the two? So James's question very specifically was, can you talk about the difference between how you approach fleshing out a lyrical idea as opposed to a musical instrumental idea? So could you just talk to us a little bit about those two elements of a song?
Okay. I think I always tell people to start with a theme. Because if you start with a theme, then it kind of like gives you a few hints and a little bit of a roadmap about, what kind of a song you're going to be writing, which gives you a hint about what kind of lyrics there need to be and what kind of melody it needs to be. And so I think that's a great place to start. I think as far as the whole thing of like maybe you've got an amazing melody and that the lyric doesn't fit, well, I think singability is the goal. Like, and singability is like, it might look amazing on paper, but without, great lyrics without an amazing melody is just poetry, and then like great music without amazing lyrics is just music, So to make it a song, it needs to have both, and it needs to have singability. So I think I always go for does it feel natural? Do you like the stress beats of the music to match the stress syllables of the song? So a good example is even getting familiar with phonetics and like going like, and phonics, like just going like, how do we naturally say that word? So like, I remember writing with someone and they had the lyric in the song, it was a Stellar Cut. They had the lyric in the song, looking back at the mistakes. And I was like, well, the word isn't mistakes, the word is mistake. And so, like, how do we make that sing naturally? So I think it's always good to, like, go after, okay, well, if it doesn't sing naturally, and there's a little bit of poetic license there, but for the most part, you want things to sing the way they're said. So, for that, like, we want the rhyme, obviously, to be that A sound. So then I think you just, like, you mess with, like, lyrics and try and rework things. So, instead of saying, looking back at the mistakes, we ended up changing the lyric to looking back at mistakes made, because then mistakes sing correctly and it still ends in that A sound. But getting familiar with the way we naturally say things. Like, there's a reason that we sing, in Gloria in Excelsis Deo, there's a reason we sing Gloria instead of Gloria.
Yeah.
Because that is, number one, it's just annoying. And then number two is the weight of the word doesn't naturally fall on the I, Gloria. It naturally falls on the O. So you want to put the weight of the syllable. You want to put the weight of the note there as well. So like, you know, a word like, even like thinking about like, you know, where you want the weight to fall. So if the let's say the sentence is like, Lord, let your glory fall, you know, then you don't want it to be like, Lord, let your glory fall. Like you want it, because those are not the big words. You want the weight to be on the words that deserve weight. So in a sentence like that, like the weight should be on like on Lord, let your glory fall. You know, you want to put your weight on the big words and on the vowels that like sing the best and are the most open. Andy, do you have like thoughts on like how to like do that?
I would just say I tend to lean towards like trying to make things like mathematically work out.
Yes.
You know, and some stronger writers that I've written with have like reminded me that not every line has to rhyme. You know, and there are lines that don't rhyme but still feel good in the mouth when they're sung, and are non-distracting rhymes. And so, I would say, just kind of in response to your question, where you said it kind of at the end of it, that it's kind of a bit of a balance and a dance between like the melody that you're working with and what you're trying to say, which is what Mia's saying. You know, make sure that the message is always true and clear, and don't compromise the message. Definitely don't compromise your theology just to make a line work. And, you know, so does that help?
It's really good. I think, you know, and it's I think it's important to go for that perfect balance, the blend where you know it works. Don't try and force something that in the end maybe the lyric fits to the melody, but you all know that it doesn't really work. You just have to press for the better thing. Perhaps you both had those experiences where you come up with a lyric and a melody, and then your eyes just go wide, and you're like, that totally fits. That's it. We nailed it. You know, and that's what you. Yeah.
That's the great thing about co-writing, as well as, you know, usually if one person's not sure and one person's not convinced, then maybe it's worth, like, you know, like having a rethink about a lyric or rethink about a melody. And like, even with melodies, let's say you love your lyric and the melody doesn't work with the lyric. If you can't change the lyric, then maybe you look at changing some of the phrasing, or changing some of the beats and the music, or, you know, making some of the phrasing longer or shorter. I think it's a great thing out there for everyone, you know, who's listening to realize that, you know, sometimes you do have those moments of inspiration where God just like, you feel like God sung it straight into your heart. And I definitely have those moments. But I think it's a great thing to realize that, like, you know, it actually isn't easy. It really is like a lot of working out, and like, you know, like Andy said, doing that dance of like, you know, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? You know, I think it's good for everybody to hear that, so that you guys know that, like, you know, sometimes it's just hard work. And if it was easy to write a song, everybody would be doing it.
I have one more thing to say too. It's just kind of an iron in the fire for me, you know, it's just that often I've spent pretty much every song that makes, for sure, but if the church band record gets signed off lyrically by my pastor, and a lot of you guys out there, girls writing, have some kind of pastoral authority over you, and those people tend to be a bit more like indifferent on how a melody works, and very, very high on whether theology is true for the song.
Yeah.
And I have used my pastor for that a lot. Like, I sent him lyrics without melody with kind of a tagline in the, like, my subject heading in the email is, "Would you preach this?" because if he can't preach it because I've bent the theology to make the lyric work, then we shouldn't be singing it. And that's a huge discipline, I think, as well in the part of Christian songwriting.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's plenty of songs one thing that I think, and it's just, you guys can be like, that's a stupid point or not, that's okay. I think it's worth saying is, I have a really massively hard time, especially with songs to be sung in church. I think it's great to even challenge your own theology and even what you think. Is it true? Just because you feel it doesn't mean it is true. I have a really hard time when songs cross my path that say I am sinful, I am dirty, I am unclean, because to me that is just not true. And it's not even good theology to be singing over yourself, because the cross is either the finished work of Christ or it is not. Now, do we make mistakes? Yes. But what God says is and what the Bible says is you are the righteousness of Christ. You since the old has passed away, you are a new creation. So even just maybe even challenging your own theology, maybe it's how you feel, but is it true? And that's the big thing is we want to write things that are true, not just how we feel. It's almost the how we feel is the feeling side of things is the icing on the cake, to make it, a bit sweeter, but the cake has to be full of truth.
I think it's, we just have to recognize also it's such a great responsibility when we're allowing people to write songs, come up with lyrics, and then those will be sung by your entire congregation, and it becomes a part of their theology. It's not like we're just writing a song to fill 3 minutes. We're shaping the theology of a church by the songs that we sing. And oftentimes we're taking ideas from Scripture and reworking those ideas into our own, crafty lyrical phrases. It's almost a dangerous place to be. You definitely don't want to tread, lightly in those grounds when you're putting a song into the lips of the people of your church, right? So
especially when you think about stuff like that, saying teaching people to sing over themselves. I am broken. I am guilty. That sort of thing. Do you want people walking home and walking out of a service with that the last thing that they just sung over themselves? I am guilty. I am a mess. I want people to walk out going, I was guilty, but Jesus. I was broken, but Jesus is a healer. So I think always making sure that you're leaving people with looking up. Yeah,
it's good. Well, Andy and Mia, we have time for one more question. It's a longer one, and believe it or not, Andy, your name shows up in this question from Kenny. I don't think she was expecting that you would actually be on here to talk about this, but we'll give this to the two of you together. We'll answer this question, and then we'll kind of close out here. So,
awesome.
So Kenny asks, how would you gauge the balance of being the worship pastor for your church and testing your songs out during congregational worship? One thing Andy Rosier says about new worship songs is that the best way to test them out is to sing them with your congregation, and it's almost an automatic test of whether or not the song will work in that context. Is this a good idea in terms of using the worship platform to try out your songs? My greatest fear is that people will either hate them or think I'm promoting myself, or they'll connect through them and make more of me. So, I guess is the platform really a place to test out your songs? That's the short version of her question.
Okay, I think I'll try to answer. There's a lot of answers in that. I'll try to answer really quick.
Yeah.
Firstly, before you ever get a song to the platform, it needs to go through some hoops. There needs to be a number of people in your life who are this song, I love this song, we should be singing this song. And most of all, the one person who needs to be signing off on that song needs to be your worship pastor, who is your senior pastor.
Yeah.
So I'm a worship pastor, but my senior pastor is really the worship pastor of the church because worship is so much more than just the songs that we're singing. So if he wants to bring that song to the church, I've rarely got up on stage and said, hey, here's a new song I've written. I don't think I've ever done that. I just get up and say, hey, here we want to teach you a new song. And if my pastor, though, wants to get up and say, hey, we wrote that song, like our worship team wrote that song, then he's free to do that. But I will never, use it as, a self-promotional platform for, who wrote the song, because I don't want that to cloud the judgment of my congregation as to whether they like the song or not. But I do ultimately believe that, I don't want to be singing I don't want to be putting any songs in the canon of my church that my church can't use as a vehicle to worship God. And their canon, I may be kind of the keeper of the canon, but ultimately they decide. Some of my favorite worship songs as a private worshiper, we don't sing in my church because they work for me, but they don't work for my church. And so, we're, like I said, we're writing 100 songs per kind of writing cycle, but only 20 of those ever get kind of tested on the church. That's 80 songs plus that just are gone forever. And it's great because they're not gone, because they were written for the Lord, and it's not about the song, it's about the effort of writing the song. And the effort of writing the song is ultimately worship God, not the song itself. So yeah, does that help? I'll just
that totally helps. Mia, do you have a few thoughts to add to that?
Oh, hang on. Can I say something, Ryan? Do you mind?
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say as well, for the guy who's writing in, who is the worship pastor, I think it is hard to go, how do I gauge singing my own song and people not thinking, oh, that guy's promoting himself? I would say, just as worship pastors, make sure that you're, you have to do everything for acceptance, from acceptance, not for acceptance. Because I think if you are bringing songs out of insecurity, you will always give your songs more time than you will anybody else's, and you will set your songs up to win more than you will anybody else's, because it matters more for you that your song wins, I think it's about giving every song that comes the same consideration and the same, and giving it the same opportunity to win at church as you would the songs you personally wrote. I also think sometimes a good way of getting around it being about you, if that's your fear, is give it to somebody else to lead. That's one thing that has been a great thing for me, is so often the songs that I write, I don't lead them, and so it's not about me at all. Even this vertical tour that I'm on, it's fantastic because some of the songs that, we're doing, some of the biggest songs, like Spirit of the Living God and Worthy, Worthy, and Not for a Moment, I'm on the tour, I'm not singing those songs, so to be honest, it's not about me at all, So maybe that's a great way of, bringing a new song to church, is actually getting somebody else to sing it, so then you can't take it personally, and it can't, be about you anyway, because nobody knows that you wrote the song. Because let's be honest, none of us get up on a church on a Sunday and say, oh, this first song Chris Tomlin wrote, here's the song. Oh, this next song Matt Redman wrote, here's the song. And also, here's a song I wrote, here's the song, So I think you don't even need to, say any of that stuff. But if you're worried about it, looking, weird on you, then give it to one of your other worship leaders to introduce.
Yep, that's totally great insight. Oh, I'm just thinking, overall, you guys have been so amazing, very real, very practical, down to earth. You're not glossing over, in any way how, because there is work behind the whole world of songwriting, and you've really sort of given us a great window into that. So, thank you so much, Andy and Mia, for taking time in the back of the bus as you are, and may the Lord just bless you guys with incredible times of worship as you are together with the Vertical Band, sharing the songs you've written, and just really we treasure your songs in praise charts and the relationship that you guys have with us. So this has been a really insightful time. Thank you.
So great. Hey, and can I just say, like, for anyone who's out there, not to be all promoty, but you know, if you're out there and like you're anywhere near us, like, you know, we're the website verticalchurchbands.com has all the dates for the tour, and if you are out, like, you know, in one of the areas like that we're coming to in the next 10 days, we're actually doing songwriter workshops, and we would love you guys to come and be a part. So feel free to check out the you know, the website and like come and join us for the songwriting workshop and the nights of worship, because we'd love to catch up with you and see you.
Yeah, perfect. That's some people were asking
especially
about that as well.
Especially we're coming to Canada, so.
Yes, I would love to have you out here too.
No, we are. We're coming to Canada in a couple of days.
Oh, you are? Like, how close? To the West Coast?
No, we're going to be near Toronto, so that was and like the East Coast mostly. But just check out the website, guys, because I know that there'll be people listening that actually are close, and there's a bunch of things, and we're going to cover so much in the workshop. If you really are passionate about songwriting, and if you're just passionate about worship, come out and worship with us.
Right on. Hey, Andy and Mia, do you mind if I just pray for you before we close out, and then we'll close out from there? Is that all right?
We would love that. Thanks.
Thank you, Father, for Mia and Andy and the treasured relationship that you've given them together with their whole band, and just the way even Vertical Church and all of Mia's songs in her heart have been able to be such an encouragement all around the nation. Thanks for this special time and season that they have to be able to get in the bus and just go to where the people are, and not just even sing to them from this massive stage, but also get down, you know, into the chairs with them and the songwriting workshops, and really speak to their hearts and train and equip the songwriters. And we I just want to speak a blessing, Lord, over their ministry, especially in these next few days, that it would just be a treasured time, an anointed time, and a time to encourage the church around. So we thank you for them and their gift to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
So much for
all right.
us.
You guys are awesome. This was truly a gift, and we'll let you head on back into the whole world of your tour, and the Lord bless you in that. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Mia.
Guys.
Okay, bye.
God bless.
Bye.